The curbs relax at local restaurants, up to 12 people allowed per table starting today. At least 37 people killed in Thailand's deadliest mass shooting in history. And the world's least affordable housing market could see a rare downturn. We'll tell you more later. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Hong Kong reported 4,318 new COVID infections. That's over 600 cases more than yesterday's tally. But with the epidemic on a stabilizing trend recently, the government is relaxing the social distancing rules. At restaurants, the maximum number of patrons allowed per table has gone up from 8 to 12. Timothy Lee begins our coverage tonight.
Cheerful songs sung across the city's restaurants as the government took another step, returning Hong Kong to normalcy. In a further relaxation of anti-COVID measures, the rules now allow 12 people to gather at the same table. Many expressed glee over the announcement. This woman said she lost her partner and she often feels lonely. But after finding out about the new arrangement, she immediately texted her friends to enjoy a long-awaited meal together. This woman recalled how the atmosphere lacked a sense of joy before the restrictions were relaxed, and that she is now happy since she no longer needs to sit at separate tables when dining with her friends and family. The government reminded that those going to bars or banquets will still have to provide proof of negative RT results before entering the premises. This restaurant in Mong Kok was fully booked this morning. However, most patrons came in groups of 2 to 3 people. A restaurant spokesperson says the relaxed measure will boost the eatery's evening business, citing that they have already received 30 banquet reservations. But he added that while he believes there could be a 40% growth in business, it will take at least a month to tell whether the waves of daily customers are here to remain. The government has also relaxed the maximum number of people allowed per table at bars from 4 to 6, while the limit for banquet patrons has been raised from 120 to 240. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Residents aged 50 or above can receive their COVID jabs and flu shots at community vaccination centers from Thursday. Chrissy Khan has more.
Starting today, residents who are 50 years old or above can choose to take COVID and flu vaccines together for free at the city's community vaccination centers. Before 10 in the morning, some residents already queued outside this center before it opened in Jordan. The center's staff reminded residents that they will have to take the flu shots and COVID jab at the same time. Some residents were eventually unable to take their flu shots, like this man. They said, "I was already triple jabbed. As I am a COVID-recovered patient, they don't allow me to take the COVID shots. So they suggested me to go to other outlets where offered flu jabs," he said. Some residents chose to go to private centers to take their COVID and flu shots. In this vaccination center, staff would administer COVID vaccine, then the flu shots. Jab takers had to rest for 15 minutes before they were allowed to leave. This resident said he wanted to get vaccinated against influenza, as some health experts had warned that flu could be resurgent this winter. In a press briefing today, some doctors from the Hong Kong Medical Association called on Hong Kongers to receive flu shots before the winter. They added that people who are in the high-risk groups will have a higher chance of developing medical complications after getting infected with influenza. Following the easing of social distancing measures and the removal of mandatory quarantine requirements, the doctors' group expected more people would be exposed to the flu virus this year. They added that around 400 people succumb to flu every winter during the influenza season, according to statistics over the past years. Christy Khan, TVB News.
The 60 mobile specimen collection centers in the city are now regularized into permanent COVID testing sites. Including the 19 screening centers, Hong Kong will have a total of 85 community testing sites. With a new move, around 70% of the city's population could reach the nearest testing point within 1 kilometer or 15-minute walk from their residence. A change too in self-pay COVID screening services starting late October. Pricing would come in 2 tiers. to have their test results received within 12 hours, the public have to pay up to $240. A maximum of $150 will be charged for those who could wait for the results within 24 hours. Come early November, online reservation would be accepted for the newly added testing sites. In Thailand, a former policeman killed at least 37 people, including 24 children, during a knife and gun rampage at the daycare center. The gunman later shot dead his wife and child at their home before turning his weapon on himself. The incident is one of the world's worst child death tolls in a massacre by a single killer in recent history. According to police, most of the children who died were stabbed to death. The attacker was a former member of the force who was dismissed from his post last year over drug allegations. The man had been in court earlier in the day. He had then gone to the daycare center to collect his child. North Korea launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles after the United States redeployed an aircraft carrier to nearby waters. The tit-for-tat is causing a divide in the United Nations Security Council, with Russia and China accusing the Americans of provoking Pyongyang after joint military drills with South Korea. Nasri Karim reports.
U.S.-made short-range missiles being launched into the sea by United States and South Korean forces during joint military drills. The USS Ronald Reagan and an armada of American and South Korean battleships patrolling the waters of eastern South Korea. Provocation or precaution? For North Korea, it was an open show of hostility and enough of a threat for Pyongyang on Thursday to launch 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the sea between the Korean peninsula and Japan. Pyongyang condemned Washington for talking to the United Nations about their missile tests, saying they were just counteraction measures of the Korean People's Army on South Korea-US joint drills. An emergency UN Security Council meeting on Wednesday in response to a North Korean test launch on Tuesday that sent an intermediate-range missile over Japan only served to deepen the divide. Russia says North Korea was forced to act because of American military activity in the region. Geng Shuang, China's deputy permanent representative to the United Nations, encouraged dialogue and called on the U.S. to take concrete actions, demonstrate its sincerity, and address North Korea's legitimate and reasonable concerns. The U.S. envoy to the UN hit out at Russia and China for continuing to veto more sanctions against North Korea.
DPRK has enjoyed blanket protection from 2 members of this council. These 2 members have gone out of their way to justify the DPRK's repeated provocations and block every attempt to update the sanctions regime. In short, 2 permanent members of the Security Council have enabled Kim Jong-un.
Thursday's launches were North Korea's 39th and 40th of the year, prompting the USS Ronald Reagan and its fleet to return to South Korean waters after taking part in drills. North Korea considers such US-led drills near the peninsula as an invasion rehearsal. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Speaking on the final day of the UK's ruling Conservative Party conference, Prime Minister Liz Truss pledged to stay the course and transform the British economy. Truss sought to reassure the public that her plan was the right way to reignite Britain's economic growth. She claimed low growth meant lower wages, fewer opportunities, and less money to spend on the things that make life better. Truss had been forced to back down from her and Chancellor of the Exchequer Kwasi Kwarteng's proposal to slash the UK's top tax rate. That announcement led to the pound tumbling after investors were spooked by the potentially huge levels of borrowing that would be needed to finance the policy. U.S. President Joe Biden met Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as he took a first-hand look at the devastation left by Hurricane Ian. Biden stressed the need for state efforts for recovery. Biden, a Democrat, and DeSantis, his potential Republican presidential rival, have clashed over a number of issues, including COVID-19 vaccines, climate change, and abortion rights. But during the visit, they set differences aside. Biden pledged federal support for a rebuilding effort that could cost taxpayers billions of dollars and take years. More than 100 people died and nearly 400,000 homes and businesses remained without power in Florida on Tuesday. That was 5 days after the hurricane crashed across the state.
And you don't...
Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed the final papers to annex 4 regions of Ukraine, which are partially occupied by Russian forces. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a law to incorporate 4 partially occupied Ukrainian regions, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, into Russia on Wednesday. The new law would annex around 18% of Ukraine's territory, equivalent to an area roughly the size of Portugal. It is Europe's biggest annexation since World War II. The move follows what the Kremlin called referendums in Ukraine that Kyiv and the West have dismissed as illegitimate. Russia does not fully control any of the 4 provinces it claims to have annexed. A map of Russia's new regions published by Russian state news agency RIA included the full territory of the Ukrainian provinces. However, some parts were shaded and labeled as being under Ukrainian military control. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov did not rule out further potential annexations. He did not specify which additional Ukrainian territories Moscow is referring to, nor did he address whether the Kremlin planned to organize more Moscow-orchestrated ballots in other regions of Ukraine. Still, Russia is facing mounting setbacks on the ground as Ukrainian forces retake more land in the eastern and southern regions that Moscow claims to have annexed. During his nightly address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian forces have liberated 3 more settlements in the southern Kherson region. He names the 3 as Novovoskrenska, Novogrigoryivka and Petropavlivka, all of which lie to the northeast of the city of Kherson. Zelensky went on to term Russia's annexation an act of a collective madhouse at a time when Moscow's forces have been fleeing from the front lines. He said he and senior military officials met to discuss recovering all of the territory occupied by Russia. Dan Orel, TVB News.
France's Annie Ernaux has won the 2022 Nobel Prize for Literature. One of France's most garlanded authors and a prominent feminist voice, Ernaux is the first female French Nobel Literature winner. Her more than 20 her life and the lives of those around her. They present uncompromising portraits of sexual encounters, abortion, illness, and the deaths of her parents. The Nobel Committee cited the 82-year-old author for the courage and clinical acuity with which she uncovers the roots, estrangements, and collective restraints of personal memory. The prize is awarded by the Swedish Academy and is worth over $900,000. Australia's renowned cliff diver Rhiannon Ifland completed the world's first dive off a helicopter. The 31-year-old 5-time world champion plunged from a height of 20 meters into the choppy waters of Sydney Harbour. The dive took place at Messrs Macquarie's Point and was staged as a teaser for the Red Bull Cliff Diving 2022 World Series final. That is scheduled on 15th of October. It was the first time Ifland had performed a dive from a helicopter in Australia, and she said it took plenty of mental preparation to do so. Back locally, Hong Kong's mandatory provident fund schemes have recorded the worst ever performance this year. Chrissy Khan with this report.
MPF Ratings, a locally based research firm, reported that Hong Kong had recorded a loss of about $82.1 billion in MPF last month. This means every employee's MPF account suffered an average loss of around $18,000. The firm said the poor performance was caused by factors such as the economic recession, soaring global inflation, and interest rate hikes. And these factors will continue to affect the MPF in the future. Meanwhile, more than 29,000 notices were sent out every month to employers who failed to make MPF contributions on time, according to the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Authority. That's an increase of more than 15% from the same period last year. The authority said they had recovered about $200 million in unpaid MPF contributions from employers in the last financial year. Additionally, they will contact employees who need help.
That is understandable as well because of the economic situation. And that is why the NPFA has introduced additional measures to assist affected employees in recovering default contributions, including encouraging and discussing with our trustees about an automatic information sharing system to ensure that members would get to know whether each month contributions have been made.
The MPFA will also extend its service hotline operating hours so that scheme members will be able to contact the authority if they have any questions. Christy Khan, TVB News.
The plastic bag levy is expected to be doubled to $1 starting December 31st. The government expects the raise in levy will lead to a 25% drop in plastic bag disposal. Under the plan, exemptions will be tightened as well. Purchase of chilled or frozen food and food in non-airtight packaging won't be given free plastic bags. But shops and restaurants could still offer free bags for unpackaged fruit and takeaways for meals. The police have launched an online search engine that checks suspicious phone calls and websites to help the public avoid scams. That in response to a surge in phone and internet scams in the city, with the crimes having increased by 40% from January to August this year. Search engine users simply have to type in a suspicious web address, phone number, or social media account to find possible matches in the police database. The world's least affordable housing market could see a rare downturn on rising rates, an exodus of residents, and a slowing economy. Jason Tan reports.
According to Goldman Sachs, Hong Kong's home prices by the end of next year will decline as much as 30% from last year's levels. It said residential prices are expected to fall by 15% this year and another 15% in 2023. The U.S. Investment Bank earlier predicted prices to fall by 20% by 2025. The new figures come amid faster than expected increases in HIBOR, which refers to the interest rate banks charge each other for borrowing money. The 3-month HIBOR has surged to the highest since 2008, while the 1-month rate is at its steepest in over 2.5 years. More than 90% of Hong Kong's mortgages are tied to HIBOR. Meanwhile, according to a forecast by Centerline Property Agency, property transactions in the city are likely to hit a historic low of 65,000 this year. That would be the fewest since 1996. Jason Tan, TVB News.
And let's switch gears to overseas markets and let's see where we stand right now on Wall Street. The Dow is down 0.53%, while S&P 500 is posting a 0.44% decline. Across the pond, European markets are also losing steam. UK FTSE sheds 0.78%. The French CAC retreats 0.82%. German DAX, meanwhile, down 0.37%. The Hang Seng Tech H down 0.67% to settle at 3,660 points. Tonight's Mark 6 numbers are 4, 11, 21, 28, 31, 47. The extra number is 5. A look at the weather before we go. A few showers tomorrow. Sunny intervals during the day. Temperatures will range from 26 to 31 degrees. And that's the news for tonight. Thank you for watching.